Welcome to the very first episode of the Business Intelligence Podcast. I am your host, Ryan McDaniel. Today's show has been powered by Quantico AI. There's something happening in business right now that I don't think enough people are talking about. It's not flashy, it's not loud, and it's not being announced in big dramatic headlines. But it's happening quietly, and it's already changing how companies operate. And I don't think most people fully realize just how fast things are moving. I found myself thinking about this more and more lately because I had a moment recently that genuinely surprised me. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was futuristic, but because something I had spent years getting good at was suddenly being done differently. And in some cases, better. And I didn't expect that moment to come this soon. For those of you who don't know me, I spent nearly a decade working in the mortgage industry. My role was heavily focused on business development, building relationships, hosting events, following up with partners, staying top of mind. And like a lot of people in relationship driven industries, I built my career around being responsive, consistent, and persistent. I took pride in follow up. I took pride in responding quickly. I took pride in making sure conversations didn't fall through the cracks. Because in industries like mortgage, real estate, and financial services, that's where opportunities live. They live in the follow up, they live in responsiveness, they live in consistency. And over time, I got pretty good at that. I built systems for myself and my teams, I refined workflows, I learned what worked. And like most professionals, I thought that skill set would continue to be one of my biggest advantages. And then something interesting happened. I started experimenting with AI driven systems, not because I thought they would replace anything, but because I was curious. I wanted to see what was possible. I wanted to see if there were ways to remove friction, speed things up, and improve consistency. And at first, it felt like just another tool. Helpful, but not revolutionary. But then I started noticing something. The system wasn't just assisting me, it was doing things I literally couldn't keep up with. It was responding instantly. It was following up consistently. It wasn't forgetting. It wasn't getting busy. It wasn't losing momentum. And I started to notice something that honestly caught me off guard. The system started outperforming me. And that was a really interesting moment because it wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't a demo. This wasn't a prediction. I was watching something operate in real time. And in some cases, outperform workflows I had spent a year or more refining. And I want to be very clear about something. This wasn't about replacing relationships. It wasn't about removing the human element. It was about removing friction. Because the truth is, most professionals don't lose opportunities because they aren't skilled. They lose opportunities because they're busy. They lose opportunities because they forget to follow up. They lose opportunities because response times stretch from minutes to hours to days, and momentum disappears. But when those things start getting solved, when response times shrink to seconds, when follow up becomes consistent, when conversations don't fall through the cracks, you start to see something shift. More conversations happen, more appointments get scheduled, more opportunities surface. And once I saw that happen, I started noticing it everywhere. Teams responding to leads instantly. Companies re engaging databases they hadn't touched in years. Organizations becoming more consistent, more responsive, and more efficient. And the results weren't theoretical, they were measurable. And that's when something else started to click for me. I don't think AI is replacing expertise, I think it's amplifying it. The best operators become even better, the most responsive teams become even faster, and consistency, which has always been one of the hardest things to maintain, suddenly becomes easier. And that's where I think something really interesting is happening right now. Because I actually don't think AI is going to replace most professionals. I think it's going to widen the gap between them. The people who embrace it become faster, they become more responsive, they become more consistent, and those advantages compound. Meanwhile, the people who ignore it don't necessarily fall apart overnight, but they start to move slower by comparison. And over time, speed becomes an advantage, consistency becomes an advantage, responsiveness becomes an advantage. And these things quietly compound. And what's interesting is, this isn't just happening in one industry. I've seen this in mortgage, I've seen this in real estate, I've seen this in financial services, I've seen this in local service businesses. Small teams becoming incredibly efficient, operators becoming more responsive than ever. And the companies adopting these tools right now aren't always the biggest ones. They're the ones willing to experiment. They're the ones willing to move a little faster. They're the ones willing to explore what's possible. And they're not announcing it. They're not making big dramatic statements. They're just quietly getting better, quietly getting faster, quietly having more conversations, and quietly building momentum. And I think that's one of the most interesting parts of this shift, because it's happening quietly. And I think the next few years in business are going to be defined by responsiveness. The companies that move the fastest, respond fastest, follow up consistently, and remove friction are going to win. Not because they're bigger, but because they're more responsive. And right now, we're still early. This isn't the future anymore. This is already happening. And the people paying attention are going to have an advantage most people won't even realize exists. This is exactly what I want to explore on this podcast. Not just AI, but how business is changing, how operators are adapting, and what the future of business actually looks like from the people building it. Because there's something interesting happening right now. Not loud, not obvious, but very real. And I think we're only starting to see what's possible. Tune in to episode 2 as I dive into what this added speed and capability really means for the future of business. Thank you for listening to the very first episode of the Business Intelligence Podcast. I've been your host, Ryan McDaniel. Today's episode has been powered by Quantico AI. To learn more about Quantico or to schedule a Zoom with me to discuss anything related to AI or its impacts on modern business, please take a look at the links in the description. Always down for a great conversation. And finally, I want to reassure you of one thing. If you're hearing my voice, you're not late, you're early. We're going to figure this out together. I'll see you soon.